Now that the Warriors have Kevin Durant, what are the odds that they will go 82-0? We will answer it this week on Hot Takedown, 538 Sports Podcast. Subscribe in iTunes or on the Listen tab of your ESPN app.
And now, Jalen and Jacoby on ESPN Radio.
When I pop the trunk, head to death. Y'all pop the trunk, I pop the hood.
Now act stupid, I'll pop the trunk. Now give me a boom.
He is Jalen Rose. I'm David Jacoby, and we are Jalen and Jacoby on ESPN Radio. What are we going to do, Jalen?
We're going to be what they want.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. John Wall gave me what I want because he so perfectly and succinctly summarized my sentiments about the recent decision by Kevin Durant. John Wall said, quote, "At the end of the day, he made the decision that makes him happy. I think a lot of people don't respect that. But you love the game. You play it to be happy, not to be sad and frustrated. If he's happy and comfortable in that situation, you have to respect the decision." Thank you so much, John Wall. He just broke it down to human emotions. Just the state of humanity. I want to be happy. This game makes me happy. If I play in the Thunder, I'm going to be frustrated and sad. If I play for the Warriors, I'm going to be happy. Thank you, Mr. Wall.
It just shows the weight that a franchise player has to carry. And John Wall,
he can understand that.
And John Wall is learning that in Washington. So I wrote down a few buzzwords that he said there.
Okay.
Happy, respect, love, sad, and this last one sounded personal. Frustrated.
Mm-hmm. He did. It did seem like he was projecting a little bit.
And so, but that's what the beauty of sports is. It teaches you how to deal with adversity, how to deal with success, how to deal with failure, and eventually try to overcome. And so for Washington, John Wall, as their face of the franchise, the guy that's been in the All-Star game the last couple of years, he now sees that, man, in order for me to consistently be on the contending team, I need to play with a couple of more All-Stars. Mm-hmm. And if your team isn't drafting them or acquiring them, then it can be tough for a team that is in or out of the playoffs, hovering around the 7th or 8th seed versus being out like they were this year.
And I think a lot of Durant's decision, and John Wall was projecting a little bit, but Durant's decision, it's not just about the 82-game regular season. It's about every single day, at least 9 months a year. You know, the people that you're around, the city that you're in. It's happiness versus sadness. He made the decision to make himself happy.
Well, you know you're an adult when a couple of things happen. You live where you work, and all of the bills are in your name. And so that's the level that you're talking about as it relates to these great players. Like Kevin Durant, he gave his sweat equity to Oklahoma City and Seattle for 8 or 9 years.
9 years.
He's a free agent. You know, coincidentally decided on 4th of July.
Independence, baby.
Correct. And he was a free agent. And yes, I was disappointed by him joining a team that just eliminated a team that he previously led in the playoffs. There is something with me that's going to continue to stick regardless.
I understand how you feel. I understand how you feel. I'm just trying to make you understand how I feel through John Wall.
How about this, though? Again, Kevin Durant, you know who he agrees with? Me! Because he tweeted it in 2010.
That was a while ago.
Okay.
That was a while ago. You got to allow people to evolve and grow.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we can pull up some old tweets of yours.
Correct.
I'm sure there's something there.
No question. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have his Black Planet page no more. I get it. You're allowed to grow and evolve. I get it.
Now, this is another thing that John Wall went on to say that I find interesting that has nothing to do with sort of his personal emotions. Quote, "I think it's great for the game of basketball. It's going to be exciting to see those guys mesh together. Come on. The Warriors, 2 NBA championships without a guy like that, went to 2 NBA championships without a guy like that to replace and get that." I think a very simple question for you. Do you think this is good for basketball?
I think it's terrific for basketball
Thank
overall
you.
in the business. Because here's why. We paint this brush like the NBA has always been about parity when it has not. And I talk a lot about the puppet masters, and I talk a lot about the teams that have over 6 total championships in NBA history. Are the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan, the Lakers and the Celtics. Those are only teams that have over 6. The San Antonio Spurs, Tim Duncan, they have 5. And then those numbers start to dwindle as you go throughout the league. Half of the teams have never won a championship. So what ends up happening in the NBA, you have to find ways to create storylines. It's almost like baseball. People talk about the sport like no one watches it. It's just that we don't care on a national level. But regionally, people pay attention
Attendance is
to the
crazy
to
for
the
baseball.
sport. Absolutely. And I equate that to the NBA. Yes, you can fast forward and say the Cavs are going to win the East, but you're still going to have some theater when the Bulls play against the Knicks. And the Raptors have 2 All-Stars on their teams. And
Bulls play the Heat, Cavs play the Bulls, Cavs play the Sixers. There's a lot of good matchups out there.
Correct. And so, and then you look at the Western Conference. Golden State, they didn't win a championship last year, which made Kevin Durant's job to add to that roster a lot more intriguing. There's still San Antonio, the Clippers. You see other young teams trying to find a way to pull vault themselves, so there's going to always be local storylines.
And having this quote-unquote super team, the idea, it's not good for competitive balance. I get that. It's not a step towards parity. I get that. However, it is good for business, as you say. It's good for popularity. It's like if the NBA was a movie, it now has a star at the top of the poster. It's like the Golden State Warriors. It's not an ensemble cast anymore. We have stars.
But for those that are living in the past, there was a time that all of us would wonder, they love the game so much, can the league survive Dr. J, Magic and Bird and Jordan? And the league is as exciting as it's ever been, including this year's NBA Finals, which saw a team come back from 3-1 that had never happened. A guy like LeBron James lift Cleveland to its first championship in 52 years. The game has not been better. The athletes have not been more explosive.
Never.
And this pace and space style of play has been more exciting for the fans.
And part of this debate since Durant joined the Warriors has been about, the golden era, and Magic would never join Bird's team. But let's just take a quick look at that golden era. There was definitely haves and have-nots. It's not like the league was spread across where these different teams were in the playoffs every year and going to the Eastern and Western Conference Finals every year. There was a lot of similar teams at the end of the playoff tournament every year.
Here's the difference. I could name you some successful, notable teams that had really terrific players in the 80s and 90s. The Dallas Mavs come to mind. The Cleveland Cavaliers come to mind. The Denver Nuggets
Jazz
come to mind. Utah Jazz, teams that never won a championship. But while we talk about the golden era of the league, what ends up happening is fans and media only get stuck on talking about the game like only 4 or 5 people ever played. That's truly what happened. And also what has changed is those teams still had notable players. Like Atlanta, they didn't win a championship. They didn't have Michael Jordan, but they still had Dominique Wilkins.
The human highlight.
Correct? So they still had their player that they can root for and take pride in. And the same with so many other teams in multiple conferences. So that, to me, is what has changed. Each team does not have an anchor player anymore. And that's where forming of super teams, we have 4 All-Stars on one team and things like that, does skew the balance of power.
I do agree with John Wall that it is good for basketball. However, let's just be honest. Let's just be real. If you're a Wizards fan right now and you read these quotes, you're looking at John Wall like, oh no. Like, we better draft well. We better hope Otto Porter comes into something.
But that's what it should be anyway. Like, when you have an all-star caliber player on your team, the goal is to try to stack them, see how many you can get and how many rings you can get. That's where the game has gone. And so we can't necessarily blame the player when we only talk about success and we only judge lists and who's the greatest of all time. The first thing we note is how many rings do they have.
Rings.
They pressure it down. I mean, what the fuck is it? Why you stressing me, child? It be one thing, but that's in my style. But when I go to court, you know the trust of the trial. You're not my wife. So if I head, I'll be found. You better be down. Better be how. Threaten me now, let me down. No girl letting me down. Are you sexy and thong? Sex and it's flex and your head be the bone. I get you that shit. Rescue skate on.
There's a dude that works on this show. who helps, he works with DJ Motown Clown, a.k.a. Jalen Rose, on selecting some of the music that goes into this show, which he does a great job. He does a great job. Shout out to Reggie Hood.
And if you're the headlining DJ, for me, he's been the perfect understudy because I don't have to email him each day and go song for song with him. I'll give an artist, and I trust him to pick the records, but 90% of the time when I don't respond, he still does a great job of producing the music we've had on this show.
The entire staff, every single person that works on this great show, shout to them, they share our sensibilities, and that's why the show shares our sensibilities. However, we had a little problem with Reggie.
Yeah, we found a glitch in this relationship.
We found a glitch in the matrix. That we need to work something out.
Yes.
I'll tell you why.
This is really personal.
When Cameron came up, the great Cameron Giles of the Diplomats, of Harlem, New York,
and we can make
legend in the game.
And we can make this about sports for those that, this is a basketball show. He actually had some hoop game, too.
Oh, yeah, he did. So did Mace. Both on this song, by the way, Horse and Carriage. Both could play.
You got to throw that out there.
Both played. Riverside, I believe they played at. When Cam came up, he said,
Killer Cam
is trash.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, you know what?
He said he was hot garbage.
Hey, you know what? I apologize watching you say that for somebody else.
I know.
You can't repeat that again.
Of Reggie,
you can't repeat that
on
again.
behalf of Reggie, we apologize to our listeners.
That don't even look right watching you say that.
But put yourselves in our shoes. The whole reason this all works is because everyone that works on this show shares the humor and the sensibilities of us, and it makes it all come to life. Every single person that works in the show. And then we have a splinter cell. We have an undercover. We have someone who thinks that Cameron is hot garbage.
He's a
amongst
mutant
us
on this show.
I don't even know what we should do anymore. I mean, if we can't, I think it would be unlawful if he just lost his job. I think that's unlawful.
I think he becomes the friend that you just don't invite places. Like you invite everybody but him and just act like y'all met there.
Now the reason you don't invite places is because he's got better waves than you. Another thing that goes on behind the scenes is Reggie and Jalen are in a wave competition. But it's like surfers. They're just trying to catch the best wave.
But two things. First off,
shout out to Carlos.
Mine are gray, so I should be eliminated.
You got the gray wave. The grave.
You know what I mean?
You got the grave digger.
I'm eliminated.
Thank you so much for downloading Jalen and Jacoby. We're on ESPN Radio generally, but today we're doing the podcast just for our podcast
What did you
listeners.
say about Cam again?
I don't want to
One of the greatest MCs
I don't want to repeat
ever
I'm
grace
frustrated he's still
a
works
microphone
here. I can't believe this.
With spit and verbiage.
Just stop.
In game?
I'm getting upset. I'm trying to stay in a good place.
Dipset?
I'm trying to stay in a good place. Dipset, we got you. Okay.
We got to put up that picture of me and Cam in our furs now.
Yeah, we have to. Let's just put it up right in front of Reggie. Let's just not even put it up in the studio.
You know what? We getting Cam on the show.
Let's get Cam on the show, and I'm gonna introduce him to Reggie, and then just wink. While we backtrack on what Reggie said about Cam, Al Horford is backtracking on what his father said about his decision to join the Celtics. His father intimated. He didn't intimate. He just straight up said it. Here's the quote from Al Horford's dad about Al. There wasn't as much motivation for him when he saw all the empty seats when they were winning, talking about Atlanta. He said, quote, he said to me, Dad, when we were playing Boston, they were down 15 points, and they were cheering their team like they were winning the game. They're so into the game.
That's being able to buy into a history of an organization that has won multiple championships in multiple decades. It's almost funny to me when I run into some of my friends and people that are big-time Yankee fans, and they be running around like they have 27 championships in their lives. Mm-hmm. You embrace the history of a team. And so for the Atlanta Hawks, they've had some peaks and valleys of being a playoff team, recently winning 60 games, having 4 All-Stars, having the Coach of the Year. But I think his time there just expired more than anything else.
House.
And also, Millsap emerged. And when you see where the game is going, Millsap was the best power forward in the Eastern Conference last year. Yeah, I said it. And so now, when you look at Al Horford, he can play the 5, but to me, he can be a lot more effective when he can play some minutes at the 4 as well. So there's a basketball thing at play. I respect his dad because he played in the league. He knows what he's talking about. He's been around the corner. And yes, the Boston Celtics fans are going to cheer when they're down 15 because
fans.
They have a history of watching greatness out there on the floor.
And another thing is, you know what makes fans cheer?
Winning
Championships, winning. You know what? Like Atlanta fans, yeah, they had a good season. Like, oh, they weren't cheering enough. The attendance was enough. That was for one regular season. If you win for 4 or 5 years and you win a championship, guess what fans are going to do? They're going to cheer. So it's not like the city of Atlanta or those specific fans are any different than another fan base. There's just a history of winning in Boston. There's a history of passion for that team because they've got so many banners in the Raptors.
It's strange when the NBA Finals come, there are no empty seats.
Yeah, no.
Regardless of who's playing, right?
Yeah. That's it. There was an interesting event, a WNBA game in Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota is where one of the tragic deaths via police officer happened. There was Philando Castile was pulled over for allegedly having a broken taillight, and he was then shot 4 times and bled out on Facebook Live. The Minnesota Lynx wore T-shirts. On the front, it said, "Change starts with us, justice and accountability." Change starts with us, justice and accountability. On the back, it featured the names of Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, and the shield of the Dallas Police Department, where there was a tragic incident in which multiple Dallas police officers were shot by a sniper. So this is their piece of activism. We've seen this before on NBA basketball courts, T-shirts, making statements, and this was no different than that. There is a little wrinkle in this that was interesting. There were 4 off-duty police officers that were working security at that game that, in reaction to the T-shirts, decided to walk out of the game. And I find this interesting because if you read the T-shirts and listen and look at every single word in the T-shirts, change starts with us, justice and accountability. And then it's a representation of the tragic people that passed away, both the police officers and the civilians at the hands of police officers. It's a pretty bulletproof T-shirt. It's unassailable. I mean, are you against justice? Are you against accountability? Are you against mourning the death of people that tragically died? Like that's the part that gets me a little bit is the T-shirts themselves were not so much a political statement as much as a recognition that we need to change.
I'm glad I finally get on wax about this topic because since this civil unrest has taken place and really erupted over the last 2 weeks, I've purposely not said anything, not tweeted anything because I wanted to make sure that my thoughts were not divided or taken out of context. So I'm glad you brought this up. A couple of things. I remember there was a situation in Michigan. A gentleman named Malice Green had an issue with the police. We know about the Rodney King situation that happened on the West Coast. The reason why the uprising is happening is not because the incidents are new. It's because they're now being videoed. And so we respond different to that type of graphic visual. When you see what Greg Hardy did and you read the police report, but you saw what Ray Rice did and his was on video.
Watch the video.
One of the guys never played in the NFL again. And the unfortunate thing for law officers, who I have a tremendous amount of respect, and for anybody that wants to disrespect or demean their jobs, just think about it like this. Something happens at your house tonight, you're going to call 911. And you know what else? You're going to expect them to not only be there to protect you, but also be able to eliminate any situation that forced you to call.
In your greatest times of need, those are the people that you turn to.
Correct. And so I have zero animosity towards them overall. But there are some bad cops, just like there are some bad people. There's some bad apples in the bunch. But the problem that unfortunately truly takes place is what nobody is saying, and that's what I want to say right now, is we are a country that fostered slavery. We are a country that had it to a point where blacks were looked at as being 3/5 of a man. We had Jim Crow laws. This truly took place in this country. And there were a time when you were trying to enforce your segregation. The people that were put in front of the communities to actually carry that out were the police department. And so those relationships didn't happen 100 years ago. We're talking late 60s, where the police were still hitting people with clubs, sicking dogs on people for what at our time was a country that wanted us to be divided. And I love our great country so much, and there's so many great victories that I could note. I'm proud when Barack Obama gets elected twice. I'm proud when Harriet Tubman, if it ever happens, gets on a $20 bill. Like I can name some minute and some major things that make me so happy to be a United States citizen, and I'm glad to call this place home. But KRS-One, I remember in a record growing up, and it sticks in my mind when he used to say, overseer, 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 officer. That gave me the bridge to, that in theory is what they were put in charge to carry out, the acts of dividing our country, again, because that's the country that we lived in. We lived in a divided world, unfortunately. And so you foster that animosity towards a group of people and or vice versa. It doesn't just go away in 50 years. And it doesn't just eliminate itself from the force either, because there's still some remnants of the force that have to be in play. It's only 50 years ago. It's not like it's 150 years ago. So we've taken a lot of strides to break down a lot of barriers, and I'm proud that we have. But that segment of violence that continues to lead to innocent people being shot and murdered by the police officer is not new news. It being videoed is. And so I just want to remedy my piece by saying stay encouraged, but also don't just bring flowers to the funeral. Bring soup when we're sick. Like, these things are happening not just with the police force and civilians. It's happening black on black crime. That's really prevalent as well. The lack of education, how finance really dictates a lot of your position and posture in life. And those dominoes are the barriers that we still need to get by.
And you watch all of this, and everyone's been experiencing this in this country over the past 10 days. Everyone's read everything and seen everything, and then you look in the mirror and you ask yourself, it's like, well, how do I be part of the solution? Like, what action can I take? And it seems like a simple question, but it's actually really complex. And I asked myself that a lot. I said, what am I doing to help this? Like, what have I done to help this, and what can I do? I cannot solve this problem by myself, but I can contribute to the progress of mending these fences and getting this back together. And I think that part of it is communication and understanding all sides of this. And that's one of the things that bothers me about the action of walking out. Is that's sort of the opposite of what we need. We don't need to walk out when you see someone who disagrees with you. You need to walk towards that person and communicate peacefully. And that's one of the things that bother me about this. Is I understand that if they feel that this was disrespectful to the force, or they feel that this wasn't the place for it, these police officers that left, that's fine. But the symbolism of just turning your back and walking away from someone who disagrees with you is against getting progress, walking towards each other, communicating.
Unfortunately, that's what our society has become. If you're unique, if you're different, if you beat to your own drum, you're going to now face critics. You got to be willing to deal with that in order to, I guess, stand for something or fall for anything. And I always look at the punishment in these cases and see ultimately if that's going to create a deterrent. People talk to me about PEDs in baseball. I say it's not a big deal, clearly, to me, because I see guys doing it, getting suspended 80 games and coming back and getting $100 million contracts. So to me, that crime almost became worth it to those baseball players, which is why they continue to do it. The punishment for murdering someone when you're a police officer and they're a civilian, if that punishment became so stiff, if it became so severe, that also will now serve as the main deterrent of that type of activity. And when the people who are governed to trust and want to uphold and respect law enforcement, when they see that those punishments are not stiff and they're not as stern as the average person may get if they were sitting in a courtroom and they shot and killed another civilian, that's what now becomes the injustice that people, and rightfully so, should be in an uproar about. We normally don't have guests. We probably have 5 total guests in 5 years. We getting Cam on the show.
Let's have him on the show. We just can't have Reggie here that day.
Oh, he gonna be here too.
We just can't have Reggie. Let's have Cam Newton and Cameron. Let's have the Cam day. We'll shoot him with cameras. It'll be great.
They'll be camera ready, huh?
We got to get camera ready. We got to make that stick. Cam Newton is camera ready. We're making that happen this football season. Quick hit topics, Jalen Rose.
Let's get it.
Chris Broussard, our colleague, is reporting that the Lakers think that they can sign Russell Westbrook. So they're not so interested in trading a bunch of assets to get Westbrook because they think that Westbrook can play out the season and they can just snatch him up off of free agency.
There are going to be 29 teams with 150 plus millions of dollars to spend that all feel the exact same way. When you're willing to dish out that type of money, you see the meetings that some of the players end up taking. Kevin Durant had a list of 6 teams.
And the Knicks tried to get on it. The Knicks tried to get on it.
Right.
It was in the Hamptons.
Correct.
The Knicks were like, well, let's take the LIRR. Like, we'll be there. Don't worry, anytime.
You end
Like,
up having teams begging you to be on your list.
I would love to know just the different technological approaches of the different teams, because the Warriors signed him, and you know what, they brought virtual reality glasses, Silicon Valley style, and you know the Knicks would have showed up with like a whiteboard. Would have been Phil would have been standing in the corner. Kurt Ramsey's got a whiteboard, drawing stuff on it.
Phil be standing there with a long gray beard trying to put the triangle up on the board. Well, Michael stood right here, and Shaq stood right there, and Kobe and Scottie, they would do this, and Robin would get all the rebounds.
You heard that Jeff Hornacek can run whatever he wants just as long as there's some principles of the triangle. They're getting further and further away from this triangle offense thing. They're getting further and further away from it.
And so what ends up happening is it gets dissected somewhat to a fault, because there are a lot of normal basketball actions that take place, pinch posts and cutting and things of that nature, and having all 5 spots filled is what truly makes it a triangle. I've ran it in Chicago. But I just feel like that offense can't be as effective because now you can play zone. See, when Michael was in the league, when he beat you one-on-one, he going to dunk the ball, or you got to come in hard foul. Mm-hmm. Now there could be a guy standing right there on the block to double, and another guy at the elbow. So you can shrink the floor against the triangle offense, and that, to me, is the bigger problem for trying to run it today.
Your first name is Jalen. There's a lot of Jalen's out there. A lot of Jalen's starting to get drafted, one of which is Jalen Ramsey, the new Jaguar. Well, he tweeted one of his dinner plates. It was, I how do I explain? Let me just explain some of the elements that were involved. Okay. First of all, the plate is styrofoam. Okay.
Ding. I wish I had the buzzer. I wish I had that.
You got the styrofoam plate just sets the tone for everything that's on it. And then what's on it is little cocktail weenies like Vienna sausages, okay? Now here's the thing. I like cocktail weenies. I think they're delicious. One thing I don't like, if you're going to make me a hot dog or a sausage or any sort of encased processed meat, it's got to be well done. You can't serve me a raw Vienna sausage cocktail weenie, which is exactly what Jalen Ramsey
no
had
cold
on his plate.
Yeah.
So he had about 6 of those, and then you could tell he just took the Cholula, Tabasco, Tapatio, whatever you got, Crystal, put some hot sauce on there. That's what's on the plate. That's the main. That's the entree. That's the main dish. What are the side dishes, Mr. Rose?
Only a Jalen would do as such. The Red Hot Cheetos!
If you don't know, if you don't listen to the show, Jalen Rose will eat anything that ends in Eatos. Taquitos, Cheetos, Fritos. Every day, Jalen will come down from the second floor. He'll be 10 minutes late. What happened? He'll come in with 2 bags of Cheetos. And then he has the Mike and Ike's. And then he finishes it with another Jalen Rose-ish type of beverage. Powerade.
I'm more of a Gatorade type of guy.
I know you're loyal to Gatorade. But still.
But I will say this. Powerade tastes like Kool-Aid when it's warm.
Here's my question for you. When do you start getting checks from the NFL? Like, he's got to have a couple, right?
Well, these players now are a lot more sophisticated than they used to be. Now you
really? Because that was not a sophisticated dinner.
How about this? You could just go get a loan now. Or you could just get the money fronted from your agent or something now. So
or you can get yourself a Nathan's hot dog.
You can tell at the draft that these players now have budgets. Mm-hmm. So I can't say nothing about what he was eating. I would have ate the exact same thing except I would have fried the bologna, cut a couple of slits in it.
Don't want it to bubble.
Yeah.
Just a big shout out. Hannah Davis, Derek Jeter were married over the weekend. And just to put this in perspective of just how someone can change over time, he is now in an eternal wedlock with a young lady. And here are some other young ladies that he was in lock with, but maybe not eternal. Mariah Carey's on the list. Jordana Brewster's on the list. Vanessa Manilo's on the list. Jessica Alba, Jessica Biel, Adriana Lima, Minka Kelly, and finally Hannah Davis. Now that's just a sampling. Those are the ones that found their way to wax. You know what I mean? Those are the ones that we know about. But if you look at this list, it's almost like a chronological sort of like record of who was the most popular, hottest lady of each year up until his nuptials.
This probably be a bad joke, but was that list oldest to youngest?
I think it was chronological. That's why. I think that was chronological. I think that's what it was. And I don't think that's the full list, and we both know that.
But again, he's in his 40s.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's in his 40s.
Good for him. Do you know who's happy about this? Secret winner? Leonardo DiCaprio. He's like, that was my stiffest competition out there. It was like, now it was me and Derek, and now it's just me. Rich Homie Quan, you're familiar with Rich Homie Quan?
Yes, indeed.
Young rapper from
indeed.
Atlanta. You know, they were doing a thing, Hip Hop Honors, where Lil' Kim was honored, and Rich Homie Quan was brought on to do some Biggie lyrics. He didn't know the Biggie lyrics. So you and I could both we can both understand saying ridiculous things into microphones, having embarrassing moments in front of microphones, not being prepared for performances. You and I mean, this is what we do every day.
Right.
But here's the thing. When they tell you that you have to do a Biggie verse, you should at least have an idea. Like, he was completely lost during the entire thing.
Which verse was it?
It was him and Lil' King, pull out your 9, cock on mine, get money.
Get money. Got it.
Yeah. It wasn't even long. It was like 4 bars.
Yeah,
Rich Homie Quan couldn't pull it off.
Yeah, got to know that backwards.
You got to know that one. James Harden wrote a letter to his Rockets fans. And in the letter, there's a little shot, little mini subtle diss. He said, quote, "We're not a super team, but just a group of guys that want to work hard to be the very best." And my question for you is this, I feel like LeBron feels this way. I feel like James Harden feels this way. I feel like the Clippers feels this way. Do you think that the other teams are finding comfort in being the David to the Warriors Goliath?
No, it's just them embracing what I said earlier. Like, just because you're not on paper scheduled to possibly win 70-plus games like the Warriors may be scheduled, that doesn't mean you can't have a successful season. And the Houston Rockets changed coaches. They added Ryan Anderson, who's one of the best stretch fours in the game. James Harden, he basically led the league in scoring. I don't know. First off, the guy who scores the most points, he led the league in scoring. That was James Harden. Come on, NBA.
Yes. It's a simple metric. Like who is the heaviest person? Let's both step on the scale and see who's heavier. Okay, because the one with the highest total, that's who's heavier. Who's the best scorer? Who's the scoring champion? The one who scored the most points.
How about this? James Harden scored the most points the last 2 years, but when you look at it on wax, it's going to say Russell Westbrook and Steph Curry led the league in scoring the last 2 years.
I have a good question for you. Who was the MVP of the league last year?
Steph Curry.
Who did the players vote as the MVP of the league last year?
James Harden.
Who was the MVP of the league this year?
Steph Curry.
Who are the players going to vote as the MVP of the league this year?
If they voted before the finals, Steph Curry.
If they voted after the finals?
LeBron James.
Interesting. I'm really interested to see how that one plays out.
The first guy to lead any series, any round, in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks.
I love this song.
Me too.
God, I love Cam. I love Cam just as much as I don't like Reggie. Listen to Jalen Jacoby. Thanks for tuning in. This is a podcast-only episode. No radio show today. What are we doing this show, Jalen? Get the people what they want. You did a little misfire there. You all right?
Well, no, I was going to actually say even on our day off.
This isn't a day off because we're right here in the studio.
No, it should have been a day off.
This is not a day off.
No, the staff could have used the day off.
Staff is fine. Reggie's going to have every day off soon. We give people what they want. We open up our 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, take questions from our fans. The first question we have is from Garden State Shade. He wants to know, has Jalen Rose ever hustled for loot on the courts Wesley Snipes style? Have you ever won money playing basketball?
Of course.
Of course you have. What's the most money you've won playing basketball?
Not much. Maybe like $100 or something.
But you don't. I've always heard about these like NBA 1-on-1 10K games that happen after practice and all this.
Oh! I thought you talking.
Yeah, now we're not outside. Now we're not in the concrete.
Okay.
Now we're in a gym. There's trainers around. There's hot tubs.
We're growing up. It's just like anything that you're good at. If you're good at shooting dice, if you're good at playing pool, people bet at it. So basketball is no different.
Here's the thing about putting money on a pickup game. Let me tell you something. When I play pickup, I don't call very many fouls. I try not to call. I call as little as possible just to keep everything going. However, if there's money involved, I'm calling everything. Up to 3 seconds, offensive fouls, everything.
So, something that would probably be near and dear to your heart is my final year in Phoenix. I used to play my teammates for $10,000 in 1-on-1.
That's not near and dear to my heart.
Well, this is what's going to be near and dear to your heart. One of the individuals I beat was Amari Stoudemire.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Thank you very much.
I figured you'd appreciate that. Can you share with the fans why you appreciate that?
Nope. Bill wants to know, what's your favorite alcoholic cocktail?
Red wine.
Huh. Not a cocktail.
Correct.
Okay. Good answer. Silas wants to know,
Dominus.
G-Unit or Dipset?
Dipset.
Dipset all day. This is Cameron's day. However, there's no disrespect to the great G-Unit. I love Lloyd Banks. Lloyd Banks is another one of the most underrated rappers out.
But here's the thing.
I love Lloyd Banks.
So that's almost unfair to the Dipset because 50 became a multi-global artist and entrepreneur. And he is a part of G-Unit.
You could say that how do I
like
put
50
this?
became a conglomerate.
What Cameron did is he opened the door and Joel's and Jim, Freaky Seeky, Hell Rel, to some degree, he opened the path for them, and they both became stars in their own right. You don't see Tony Ayo selling a lot of albums or making a lot of appearances. You don't see Lloyd Banks doing a lot of stuff. Young Buck.
Big shout out Lloyd Banks.
I love Lloyd Banks. Presley wants to know, how many Pokemon have you guys caught? Now, this is sweeping the nation. This is one of those things that's just taking over the public's conscious. However, sometimes things happen like that Jalen Rose is not plugged into. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I do know what you're referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm sure you're going to be wrong, but that'll be the fun part.
No, I remember seeing something that was basically fatal, and that's people were luring kids by the Pokemon game, and a couple of kids got injured. That's actually what I heard about the story.
So Pokemon Go is a new app where it's basically your camera phone, and you walk around with your camera out, and fictional characters, Pokemon, will pop up in your environment, and then you shoot fictional Pokeballs at them, and then you can capture them, and then train them to fight other Pokemon, okay? This is what's happening right now. People are walking around with their phones, just walking around the streets in their phones, so they can catch Pokemon, so they can battle each other. However, some people use this in their advantage, is they would lure people to a certain secluded area and then rob them.
Boom. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm. How many have you caught?
0.
Yeah, me too.
I don't play those games.
No. Jay Ideas wants to know, how late is the ESPN cafeteria open? Good question. People have a lot of curiosity about the ESPN cafeteria. There's a lot of curiosity about the ESPN cafeteria.
It used to. So here's a couple of things. I came from a world doing NBA Tonight, a show that sometimes doesn't come on till 1 in the morning.
An excellent program. Often precedes our program.
Yep. Big shout Cassidy.
Yep.
Hold it down.
Doug, everyone's on it.
And so I used to realize that the CAF basically stayed open until like 2 in the morning.
What the CAF does is restricts and expands based on the demand. It's sort of like a microcosm of the economy. At noon, full staff, wide open. You want a salad? You got pizza, everything's open. But 3 in the morning,
pizzas.
Selection. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same pizza. They were there at noon.
Right.
But there's someone there to feed you at all times because ESPN never stops.
Correct. But now, to answer the question, I just learned that the kitchen now closes at 10. I'll be disappointed in it.
You can get food, but just not hot food at 10.
Well, you can always, you know how you can make food hot, right? Just put it in the microwave.
Thank you for that lesson, Mr. Rose. Here's the thing about the ESPN cafeteria. It is kind of what you think it is. Like, you'll be in the line, you're like, oh, there's Scott Van Pelt getting a sandwich. It's like,
yeah,
correct,
here he is.
Oh, he's right there getting a sandwich.
But you know what? One thing I can't front. The ESPN caf tastes good.
It's pretty good. They got healthy options now. It's a forward-thinking caf. It's not like your college cafeteria.
Because here's the thing. I like to watch my food be cooked fresh. And they do that.
Mm. Here's a food thing that my wife
Salmon,
has turned me on
chicken,
to. Here's my wife has done.
Steaks.
My wife has ruined
Make a fresh
lot
salad.
of great, like lemonade is a great option for healthy meals. However, my wife has a philosophy that I now adhere to. I want my food cooked for me. Don't make a bunch of food for 50 people and then scoop off my 1/50th of it.
Oh no,
I want mine made to order. Thank you very much.
Hold on. Put the cultural brakes on for a second. This is why people of my ilk.
What do you mean by that, Mr. Rose?
My color.
What do you mean by that?
We normally don't order exactly how you see things on the menu. We'll make up a menu quick. Like, we go straight in there and be like, we'll mix match 3 or 4
change
things.
things just to change them.
This is what we do. And one of the reasons is so I can not only have my food custom, but I can have it unique, to your wife's point. Even if I go to McDonald's, I'm going to order something that they got to make fresh.
It's a good strategy.
Like, I want the filet of fish with no cheese.
They make that.
I know, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. Bring the beat back, Reg. Poppy Coon wants to know.
Extra tartar.
Tartar Bates. If you guys were boxers or MMA athletes, what would be your ring walk octagon music? I know mine before you even say yours. Mine would definitely 100%, without question. It took me 0 seconds to answer this. Annie Up by MOP. That's just what it would be. Or
That's fly.
And then after I'm undefeated for a while, I'm gonna go with Pharoah Monch, Get the F Up.
This is one of those things that I heard Steve Young joke about this. He said he used to come to practice after they had a day off on Monday, and Tuesday morning, Joe Montana would know the entire playbook, and he was like, man, this dude is a genius. He just got this playbook this morning. He learns it already. Now I realized he was the backup, so he was getting it that morning, but Joe had it 2 days before. So my point is, you killed that. You had a great answer prepared. You saw the questions. I can't even think of a record better than the ones you picked.
Can you answer a yes or no question?
Annie Up, that's classic. I'm not going to even.
Can you answer a yes or no question
Sure.
for me? Before we take the segment, did I say, hey, this question's coming, can you pick a song?
Yeah, but I don't always listen.
Okay.
Well, how about this?
Okay.
You know what?
Okay.
I'll give you one. How about this?
No, you don't have to now.
I got one.
No, I don't want to hear it anymore. So even
Tupac Under
Poppy
Pressure.
Coon just tweeted again. He said he doesn't want to hear your answer. Big Crown wants to know, Yo, Jacoby. I like that he addressed me like that. Yo, Jacoby, will you and Jalen do research for your appearance on First Take on Friday? For those that don't know, Jalen Rose and David Jacoby will be hosting, along with the great Molly Karam, on First Take on ESPN2 this Friday. Will you be doing research?
Absolutely not.
No. You don't change.
No.
You don't change when you get to the league.
You know what I'm worried about? I'm going to just be 100.
Waking up on time?
No. I'm disappointed that our meeting's at 7:30 and I can't get a cut that morning. That's all I'm worried about. Trying to figure out how to get a cut.
Did you do the same thing when you were in the league? Like you do, you wouldn't even go to practice, you wouldn't care about the game, you wouldn't prep for you wouldn't watch any game tape. All you worried about is whether or not there's a barber around.
And then when I started playing on a couple of bad teams, in my head I'm gonna put on a headband, A, when I can't have a fresh cut, and or B, it was the closest thing from covering my eyes.
Well, tune in, First Take, this Friday. It'll be Jalen Rose and David Jacoby. And guess what? I'm going to win. I don't even know what that means. We'll be back with a fresh Jalen and Jacoby podcast this Friday evening. Tomorrow we will be hosting the pre ESPY's Red Carpet Show starting at 5 Eastern on ESPN. Make sure to check us out.
You're far too kind.
We'll be back on Friday.
We out here. They know we out here.
Hey, I'm Chad Millman, and did you know that Phil Steele has forgotten more about college football than you'll ever know? And on the latest Behind the Bets podcast, he reveals all in his summer betting guide. Subscribe to the podcast from the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
Baseball's second half kicks off with one of the sport's fiercest rivalries when the Red Sox travel to the Bronx to face the Yankees. Coverage begins Saturday at 3 Eastern and Sunday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.